They said no one would ever love an amputee. Then a millionaire proved them wrong. The rain hammered against the windshield of the delivery truck as Sarah Martinez navigated the winding mountain roads of Colorado. At 28, she had been working for Rocky Mountain Logistics for 3 years, known among her colleagues for her punctuality and determination to deliver packages no matter the weather conditions. This Tuesday evening in October was no different. She had 2 more stops before she could head home to her small apartment in Denver. Just a couple more hours, and I can finally watch that movie I've been saving, she muttered to herself, adjusting the radio to find a clearer station. The static crackled through the cabin as she rounded another sharp curve. Sarah had always been independent. Growing up in a working-class family in East Denver, she learned early that if she wanted something, she had to work for it. After high school, while her friends went to college, she chose to work immediately to help support her younger brother, Miguel's education. Her parents, both hard-working immigrants from Mexico, had instilled in her the value of sacrifice and perseverance. The delivery job wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough for her to have her own place and even save a little each month. She dreamed of eventually opening her own small business, maybe a cafe or a flower shop, something simple but hers. As she descended toward the valley, the rain turned into a torrential downpour. Visibility dropped dramatically, and Sarah had to slow down considerably. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as she navigated the increasingly treacherous road. "Come on, weather, give me a break," she said aloud, trying to keep her spirits up. That's when she saw the headlights coming straight at her. A sedan had lost control on the wet asphalt and was sliding sideways across the center line, directly into her path. Time seemed to slow down as Sarah's training kicked in. She yanked the steering wheel hard to the right, trying to avoid the collision, but the laws of physics were against her. The delivery truck skidded off the road and rolled down a steep embankment, tumbling through trees and rocks before coming to rest against a large pine tree. The last thing Sarah remembered was the sound of crushing metal and the strange silence that followed. When she woke up in Denver General Hospital 3 days later, the world looked different. The sterile white ceiling above her seemed to spin, and the steady beeping of machines filled her ears. Her throat was dry, and when she tried to speak, only a hoarse whisper came out. "Sarah, oh, thank God you're awake." Her mother, Carmen, rushed to her bedside, tears streaming down her face. "We were so scared, Mika. The doctors weren't sure." "Mom?" Sarah's voice was barely audible. "What happened?" Carmen took her hand gently. "There was an accident, sweetheart. You've been unconscious for 3 days. As consciousness fully returned, Sarah began to notice things. She could feel her left hand, her arms, her torso, but something was wrong. She tried to move her legs under the blanket, but only her left leg responded. "Mom, my leg." Sarah's eyes filled with panic as she tried to sit up. Dr. Patricia Williams, the trauma surgeon who had operated on her, entered the room at that moment. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes, and the experienced demeanor of someone who had delivered difficult news many times before. "Sarah, I'm Dr. Williams. I've been taking care of you since you arrived. How are you feeling?" "My leg. I can't feel my right leg." Dr. Williams sat down beside the bed, her expression compassionate but serious. "Sarah, I need to tell you what happened during the accident. Your right leg was severely damaged. The bones were shattered, and there was extensive damage to the blood vessels and nerves. We tried everything we could to save it, but the words hit Sarah like a physical blow. You had to amputate it. We had to amputate below the knee." "I'm so sorry, Sarah. If we hadn't made that decision, the infection could have spread and put your life at risk." The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of the machines. Sarah stared at the ceiling, trying to process the information. At 28 years old, her life had just changed forever. There are excellent prosthetic options available now, Dr. Williams continued. With physical therapy and rehabilitation, many patients lead completely normal lives. You're young and strong. You have every chance of recovering fully. But Sarah wasn't listening to the hopeful words. All she could think about was how everything she had planned, everything she had dreamed of, seemed impossible now. How would she work? How would she take care of herself? Who would want to be with someone like her? Over the next few days, as the reality of her situation set in, Sarah noticed how people looked at her differently. Some visitors couldn't hide their shock. Others spoke to her in that overly sweet tone people use with children or invalids. Even worse were those who looked at her with pity. "Don't worry about the medical bills," her brother Miguel said during one of his visits. "I'll drop out of college and get a job. We'll figure this out together." "No," Sarah said firmly, the first time she had spoken with conviction since the accident. "You're not dropping out. I won't let this accident ruin your future too." But privately, lying alone in her hospital bed at night, Sarah wondered if her future had been ruined. Would anyone ever see her as whole again? Would she ever find love, have a family, achieve her dreams? The cruel whispers of doubt that would haunt her for months to come had already begun. Who could love someone like me now? 6 weeks after the accident, Sarah found herself at the Colorado Rehabilitation Institute, staring at her first prosthetic leg. The device looked alien and mechanical, nothing like the flesh and bone limb she had lost. The prosthetic technician, a cheerful man named Dave, was explaining how it worked, but Sarah could barely concentrate on his words. "The key is to start slowly," Dave was saying. "This is a basic prosthetic to get you walking again. Once you've mastered it and your residual limb has fully healed, we can look at more advanced options." Sarah nodded absently, her hands trembling as she touched the cold metal and plastic device. The weight of it felt wrong, foreign. "I know it's overwhelming," said Rebecca Chen, her physical therapist, "but I've seen hundreds of patients go through this process. You're going to do great." Rebecca was in her early 30s, energetic and optimistic in a way that sometimes irritated Sarah. How could someone who had never experienced what she was going through be so confident about her recovery? The first attempts at walking were humiliating. Sarah, who had been athletic and coordinated her entire life, now stumbled and fell repeatedly. The prosthetic felt heavy and unresponsive, nothing like her natural leg. Sweat poured down her face as she struggled to take even a few steps between the parallel bars. "I can't do this," she gasped after her fourth fall of the morning. "Yes, you can," Rebecca said firmly. "Remember, your brain is learning to communicate with a new limb. It takes time." "Easy for you to say," Sarah snapped, immediately regretting her harsh tone. "I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize. This is frustrating. It's supposed to be frustrating. But quitting won't make it less frustrating." Over the following weeks, Sarah slowly began to make progress. The steps between the parallel bars became more confident, and eventually she graduated to walking with a walker, then with crutches, and finally with just a cane. But the physical challenges were only part of her struggle. Each day brought new, emotional hurdles. Simple tasks that she had never thought about before, climbing stairs, getting dressed, even showering, now required careful planning and effort. The financial stress was overwhelming too. Despite having insurance through her job, the medical bills were mounting. Her workers' compensation would cover some expenses, but not everything. Sarah had to move out of her apartment and back in, with her parents, a blow to her independence that felt almost as devastating as losing her leg. "It's temporary, mija," her father, Roberto, assured her, "until you get back on your feet." He immediately winced at his choice of words. "I mean, it's okay, Dad. I know what you meant." But Sarah wasn't sure it was temporary. Who would hire her now? Her delivery job was obviously out of the question, and every other job seemed to require physical abilities she was no longer sure she possessed. The worst part was the isolation. Friends who had visited regularly in the hospital began to drift away as weeks turned into months. Sarah understood it was awkward for them, and she wasn't exactly pleasant company these days. She spent most of her time in her childhood bedroom, avoiding mirrors and declining invitations to go out. "You need to get out of this house," her mother said one morning, pulling open the curtains to let sunlight flood the room. "It's not healthy, staying inside all the time." "And go where, Mom? So people can stare at me. People are going to stare no matter what. The question is whether you're going to let that stop you from living." That afternoon, Carmen practically dragged Sarah to the local coffee shop where she used to go regularly before the accident. Sarah wore long pants to hide her prosthetic, but she still felt like everyone was looking at her, judging her. They had been sitting for only 10 minutes when Sarah saw Jessica, a former co-worker from the delivery company. "Sarah, oh my God, how are you?" Jessica approached their table with what Sarah perceived as forced enthusiasm. "I'm fine," Sarah replied curtly. "I heard about the accident. It's so terrible. How are you managing?" The conversation was painful and awkward. Jessica clearly didn't know what to say, and Sarah wasn't making it any easier. When Jessica finally excused herself, Sarah felt worse than before. "See, this is why I don't want to go out. People don't know how to act around me anymore." Jessica was trying to be kind, Carmen pointed out. "Jessica was treating me like a victim." On the drive home, they passed the community center where Sarah used to attend Zumba classes twice a week. She had loved dancing, the way it made her feel free and confident. Now that seemed like a lifetime ago. "I used to be happy," Sarah said quietly, more to herself than to her mother. "You can be happy again, Mija, but not if you give up." That night, alone in her room, Sarah video called her brother Miguel at college. He looked tired. She knew he was working part-time jobs to help with expenses despite her protests. "How's school?" she asked. "Good. Challenging but good. How's physical therapy?" "I'm walking without assistance now. Well, except for uneven surfaces or stairs. Those are still tricky." "That's amazing, Sarah. You should be proud of yourself." "Should. For doing something every toddler can do." Miguel was quiet for a moment. "Sarah, what happened to you sucks. It's unfair and horrible, and I hate that you're going through this. But you're still my badass big sister who taught me how to ride a bike and scared away bullies when I was little. A missing leg doesn't change that." After they hung up, Sarah sat in the darkness thinking about Miguel's words. She thought about the person she used to be, confident, independent, always ready to take on challenges. Was that person really gone forever? She looked at her prosthetic, propped against the wall in the corner of her room. Tomorrow she would strap it on again, practice walking, endure another day of physical therapy. Not because she felt hopeful, but because giving up wasn't in her nature. She didn't know it yet, but in a few weeks her determination to simply keep going would lead her to a chance encounter that would change everything. 3 months into her rehabilitation, Sarah had reached a plateau. She could walk reasonably well on flat surfaces and had even managed stairs, but she still felt like she was pretending to be normal rather than actually being normal. Her confidence remained shattered, and she turned down most social invitations, preferring the safety of her parents' house. Dr. Williams had recommended that Sarah consider joining a support group for amputees, but she had resisted the idea. "I don't need to sit around talking about feelings with strangers," she had told her mother. However, Rebecca, her physical therapist, was persistent. "There's a new group starting at the community center. Just try it once. If you hate it, you never have to go back." Reluctantly, Sarah agreed to attend one meeting. On a cold Thursday evening in February, she drove herself to the community center, her first time driving alone since the accident. The modified controls that allowed her to operate the gas and brake with her left foot still felt strange, but she was proud that she had achieved this small measure of independence. The support group met in a small room with folding chairs arranged in a circle. When Sarah arrived, 5 other people were already there, ranging in age from a teenager to an elderly man. They were chatting casually, and to her surprise, the atmosphere didn't feel depressing or clinical. "You must be Sarah," said the group facilitator, a woman named Linda, who, Sarah noticed, also had a prosthetic leg. "Welcome. I'm glad you decided to join us." As the meeting progressed, Sarah was struck by how normal and upbeat most of the group members seemed. There was Marcus, a 19-year-old who had lost his leg in Afghanistan and was now studying engineering. Janet, a 45-year-old mother of 3 who had her leg amputated due to cancer and was training for a half-marathon. Tom, a 67-year-old retired teacher who had become an advocate for disability rights after losing both legs in a car accident similar to Sarah's. "The thing people don't understand," Janet was saying, "is that losing a limb doesn't make you less of a person. It just makes you a person with different challenges." When it came time for Sarah to share, she felt nervous but oddly compelled to speak. "I'm Sarah. It's been 4 months since my accident. I guess I'm still figuring out who I am now. Some days I feel like I'm making progress, and other days I feel like my life is over." "What did you love doing before the accident?" Linda asked. Gently, "I loved dancing, and I loved my independence. I had my own place, my own job, my own life. Now I feel like a burden to everyone." "Have you tried dancing since the accident?" Marcus asked. Sarah almost laughed. "Dancing? I can barely walk normally." "I thought the same thing about rock climbing," Marcus said with a grin. "Turns out there are adaptive techniques for pretty much everything. Last month I climbed a class 5.7 route." After the meeting, as Sarah was walking to her car, she heard someone call her name. She turned to see a man approaching her from across the parking lot. He was tall, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair and an expensive-looking coat. What struck her most was how he walked, with confidence but with the slight mechanical gait she was beginning to recognize in other amputees. "Excuse me," he said as he reached her. "I hope this doesn't sound strange, but I couldn't help overhearing you mention that you used to love dancing." Sarah immediately felt self-conscious. "Yes, but that was before—" "I know. I'm Alex, by the way. Alex Thompson." He extended his hand with a warm smile. "I was in the coffee shop next door and heard some of your support group through the thin walls. I didn't mean to eavesdrop." "Oh." Sarah wasn't sure how to respond to this admission. "The reason I'm mentioning it is that I run a foundation that provides adaptive sports and recreation programs for people with physical disabilities. We have a dance program that might interest you." Sarah looked at him skeptically. There was something about his polished appearance and confident demeanor that made her defensive. "What kind of foundation?" "It's called Second Chance Athletics. We provide equipment, training and support for people who want to get back into sports and activities after acquiring a disability." "And what's your interest in this? Are you some kind of do-gooder millionaire who feels sorry for us?" Alex was quiet for a moment, then rolled up his right pant leg slightly, revealing a high-tech prosthetic. "I lost my leg in a motorcycle accident 7 years ago. I know exactly how you're feeling right now." Sarah felt her face flush with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No need to apologize. I probably would have reacted the same way." Alex reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. "If you're interested in trying adaptive dance or just want to talk to someone who's been where you are, give me a call." Sarah took the card, noting the expensive paper and embossed logo. Second Chance Athletics was printed in elegant script, along with Alex's name and the title Founder and Director. "I should warn you," Alex continued, "our dance instructor is pretty demanding. but she's amazing at helping people discover what they're capable of. As Alex walked away, Sarah looked down at the business card. Something about the brief encounter had stirred something in her. Not quite hope, but maybe curiosity. That night, she researched Second Chance Athletics online. The website showcased photos and videos of people with various disabilities participating in sports she never would have imagined possible: rock climbing, skiing, basketball, swimming, and yes, dancing. One video in particular caught her attention. It showed a woman with a below-knee amputation similar to her own, performing a beautiful contemporary dance routine. The movement was fluid and expressive, and Sarah found herself watching it over and over again. She also researched Alex Thompson. What she found surprised her. He was indeed wealthy, very wealthy. Thompson Holdings was a successful real estate development company that he had apparently built from scratch after his accident. But rather than living a life of leisure, he seemed to dedicate most of his time and resources to his foundation. "You've been on that computer for 3 hours," her mother observed, bringing Sarah a cup of tea. "Just doing some research." "About what?" Sarah showed her mother the website. Carmen watched one of the dance videos with obvious amazement. "Mija, this is incredible. Are you thinking of trying it?" "I don't know. Maybe. It seems too good to be true." Sometimes the best things in life seem too good to be true until you actually experience them. The next morning, Sarah stared at Alex's business card for a long time before finally picking up her phone. Her hands were shaking as she dialed the number. "Alex Thompson," came the confident voice on the other end. "Hi, this is Sarah Martinez. We met last night at the community center." "Sarah, I'm so glad you called. Are you interested in learning more about our programs?" "Maybe. I mean, yes, but I have to warn you, I'm not very good at walking yet, let alone dancing." "That's exactly why our program exists. Can you come by our facility this Saturday? I'd love to show you around and introduce you to our dance instructor." As Sarah agreed to the meeting, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Nervous excitement. She didn't know what to expect, but for the first time since the accident, she was curious about her future instead of dreading it. What she didn't know was that Alex had been just as affected by their brief encounter as she had been. Something about her combination of vulnerability and strength had stayed with him long after she drove away from the community center parking lot. The Second Chance Athletics facility was located in a converted warehouse in downtown Denver, and Sarah was impressed by its scale and professional appearance. The building housed multiple sports areas: a swimming pool, basketball court, rock climbing wall, and what appeared to be a dance studio with mirrors covering one entire wall. Alex met Sarah at the entrance, and she was struck again by his presence. Today he was dressed more casually in jeans and a polo shirt, but he still carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to success. "Welcome to Second Chance," he said, opening the door for her. "I'm excited to show you what we do here." As they walked through the facility, Alex explained the Foundation's mission. "We started 5 years ago with just the basics: prosthetic equipment and physical therapy support. But we realized that getting people back to basic function wasn't enough. People need to feel whole again, to rediscover joy in movement and activity." Sarah observed the other clients working with various instructors. There was a man with no arms, swimming laps with powerful strokes, a woman with one leg rock climbing with apparent ease, and a group playing wheelchair basketball with intense competitiveness. "How do you fund all this?" Sarah asked. "Combination of private donations, grants, and my own contributions," Alex replied simply. "Money I inherited when my father passed away, plus what I've made from my business. Turns out losing a leg motivated me to work harder than I ever had before." They stopped outside the dance studio, where Sarah could see a woman instructing a small group of students. The instructor was probably in her late 40s, with short grey hair and an athletic build. What was immediately apparent was her passion. She moved with grace and energy that was infectious. "That's Elena Rodriguez," Alex said. "Former principal, dancer with the Colorado Ballet. She started working with us 3 years ago. Why would a professional dancer want to work with people like us?" Alex gave Sarah a sharp look. "People like us?" Sarah realized how her words sounded. "I mean, people with disabilities, people who can't dance properly." "First lesson," Alex said gently but firmly, "is changing how you think about what you can and can't do. Elena will teach you that disability doesn't mean inability, it means adapting." Elena noticed them through the studio window and gestured for them to come in. Her smile was warm and genuine as Alex introduced Sarah. "Sarah used to love dancing," Alex explained. "What kind of dancing?" Elena asked. "Just regular dancing, Zumba classes mostly, and dancing at clubs with friends." Sarah felt embarrassed by how simple her experience sounded. "Dancing is dancing," Elena said. "The heart of it doesn't change whether you have one leg or two. Would you like to try a simple routine?" Sarah's instinct was to refuse, but something about Elena's matter-of-fact attitude made her nod. "Just follow my movements. Don't worry about your leg. Let your body find its own balance." Elena started with simple arm movements, upper body, isolations, and gentle swaying. To Sarah's surprise, she found herself able to follow along. As the music continued, Elena gradually introduced more complex movements, always watching Sarah carefully and adjusting the routine based on what she observed. "You have natural rhythm," Elena commented. "Your body remembers how to dance." After 20 minutes, Sarah was sweating and smiling, the first genuine smile she'd felt in months. "How did that feel?" Alex asked as they left the studio. "Strange. Good strange. I forgot about my leg for a few minutes." "That's the point. You were moving like a dancer, not like an amputee who happens to be dancing." As Alex walked Sarah to her car, their conversation turned more personal. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said. "Why do you do this? I mean, really, you're obviously successful and wealthy. You could be doing anything with your time." Alex was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "After my accident, I went through a very dark period. I had money, so I could afford the best prosthetics, the best therapy, the best everything. But none of that helped with the feeling that my life as I knew it was over." He paused, looking across the parking lot. "I was engaged when the accident happened. Beautiful woman, we'd been together for 3 years. She stayed with me through the initial recovery, but I could see how she looked at me differently. The pity, the discomfort, eventually she couldn't handle it anymore." "I'm sorry," Sarah said softly. "The worst part wasn't losing her. The worst part was realizing that I agreed with her. I thought I was less than what I used to be. It took me a long time to understand that I was actually more than I used to be, more resilient, more empathetic, more determined." Sarah understood exactly what he meant. "So you started the foundation to help other people figure that out faster than you did?" "Something like that. But honestly, I get as much out of it as anyone. Watching people like you rediscover their strength reminds me of my own." Over the following weeks, Sarah attended dance classes twice a week. Elena was a demanding instructor, but she had an uncanny ability to push Sarah just beyond her comfort zone without overwhelming her. With each session, Sarah's confidence grew. More importantly, she began to see herself differently. Instead of focusing on what she couldn't do, she started noticing what she could do. Her balance improved dramatically, her core strength increased, and she found herself walking with more confidence even outside the studio. "You look different," her brother Miguel observed during one of their video calls. "Different? How?" "Happier. More like the Sarah I remember." Sarah realized he was right. The constant anxiety and self-doubt that had plagued her since the accident hadn't disappeared. but they were no longer dominating her thoughts. She was also becoming more aware of Alex. He often watched her classes from the observation area, and she found herself looking forward to their conversations afterward. There was something about him that made her feel normal, not like a victim or a patient, but like a woman worth getting to know. One evening, after a particularly challenging class, Alex offered to buy her dinner. "Just dinner between friends," he said, apparently sensing her hesitation. "You've been working hard, and I know a great place that serves incredible Mexican food." Sarah surprised herself by accepting. As they sat across from each other at a small family-owned restaurant, their conversation flowed easily. Alex asked about her family, her dreams before the accident, her plans for the future. "I don't really have plans anymore," Sarah admitted. "I'm still figuring out what I'm capable of." "What did you want to do before the accident?" "I wanted to open my own business, a cafe maybe, or a small shop, something that was mine." "What's stopping you now?" Sarah gestured toward her leg. "This. Who's going to want to do business with someone who—" "Sarah," Alex interrupted gently, "you're doing it again. You're defining yourself by what you think you can't do instead of what you can do." As the evening progressed, Sarah found herself opening up in ways she hadn't with anyone since the accident. Alex listened without judgment, offering perspectives that challenged her assumptions about her limitations. When he drove her home, there was a moment of awkwardness at her front door. Sarah felt an attraction to Alex that confused her. Was this real, or was she just grateful for his kindness? "Thank you for dinner," she said, "and for everything you're doing for me." "I'm not doing anything for you, Sarah. You're doing the work. I'm just providing the space for you to do it." As Alex drove away, Sarah stood on her parents' front porch for a long time, thinking. For the first time since the accident, she was beginning to believe that her story wasn't over. It was just beginning a new chapter. What she didn't know was that Alex was having similar thoughts. As he drove home to his empty house in the hills above Denver, he realized that watching Sarah rediscover her strength was reminding him of something he had forgotten, the possibility of love. 2 months later, Sarah's transformation was evident to everyone who knew her. She moved with confidence, smiled regularly, and had begun to venture out socially. More importantly, she had started to envision a future for herself again. The breakthrough came during a particularly intense dance session with Elena. They had been working on a routine that involved complex spins and balance challenges that would have seemed impossible to Sarah just weeks earlier. "I want you to try something," Elena said, stopping the music. "Close your eyes and dance. Don't think about your prosthetic. Don't think about balance. Don't think about anything except how the music makes you feel." Sarah hesitated. Dancing, with her eyes closed, seemed like asking for a fall. "Trust yourself," Elena encouraged. "Trust your body." Sarah closed her eyes as the music began. Slowly, tentatively, she began to move. At first, her movements were constrained and careful, but as the music continued, something shifted. Her body began to respond to the rhythm naturally, without the conscious control she had been exercising. For 3 minutes, Sarah danced with her eyes closed, moving with a fluidity and expression that surprised everyone watching, including Alex, who had been observing from the doorway. When the music stopped and Sarah opened her eyes, Eleanor was beaming. "That," Eleanor said, "was beautiful. That was you dancing, not your disability dancing." Alex approached, his expression thoughtful. "How did that feel?" "Free," Sarah replied without hesitation. "For the first time since the accident, I felt completely free." That evening, Alex asked Sarah if she would join him for a different kind of outing, a gala dinner for the Colorado Disability Rights Foundation. "It's a fundraising event, but also a celebration. I think you'd enjoy meeting some of the other advocates and athletes. Sarah's first instinct was to decline. A formal event with hundreds of people seemed overwhelming. But Alex's confidence in her was becoming harder to resist. "I don't have anything appropriate to wear to a gala," she said. "Would you allow me to help with that? I know it might seem presumptuous, but I'd really like you to be there with me." The shopping trip for a gala dress was Sarah's first real test of her new confidence in a challenging environment. The upscale boutique that Alex had suggested was intimidating, and Sarah felt out of place among the expensive gowns and well-dressed salespeople. But Alex's presence was reassuring, and the salesperson, Maria, was professional and kind. They found a stunning deep blue dress that complemented Sarah's coloring and, more importantly, made her feel elegant and beautiful. "You look incredible," Alex said when Sarah emerged from the dressing room. There was something in his voice that made Sarah look at him more carefully. His expression wasn't just appreciative, it was admiring in a way that made her heart race. The night of the gala, Sarah spent an hour getting ready, taking care with her makeup and hair in a way she hadn't bothered with since the accident. When Alex picked her up, wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo, Sarah felt like she was stepping into a different version of her life. The event was held at the Brown Palace Hotel, one of Denver's most prestigious venues. As they walked into the ballroom, Sarah was struck by the diversity of the attendees. There were people in wheelchairs, people with prosthetics, people with service dogs, and many others whose disabilities weren't immediately visible. But what struck her most was how confident and successful everyone seemed. "This is what I wanted you to see," Alex said, noticing her expression. "This is what's possible." During dinner, Sarah found herself in conversations with accomplished professionals, lawyers, doctors, business owners, artists, who happened to have disabilities. For the first time, she began to see her amputation not as a defining limitation, but as one characteristic among many that made up who she was. The evening's keynote speaker was a woman named Dr. Jennifer Hayes, a renowned surgeon who had continued her career after losing her sight to diabetes. "The world will try to tell you what you can't do," Dr. Hayes said. "Your job is to prove them wrong, not through anger or defiance, but through excellence. Excel at what you love, and the barriers will fall away." As they danced at the end of the evening, Sarah's first time dancing with a partner since the accident, she felt a shift in how Alex was looking at her. His hands were gentle but sure as he guided her through the steps, and there was an intimacy in the way he held her that had nothing to do with her disability and everything to do with her as a woman. "Sarah," he said quietly as the song ended, "I need to tell you something." Before he could continue, they were interrupted by several other attendees who wanted to meet Sarah and congratulate her on her dancing. By the time they were alone again, the moment had passed, and Alex seemed to have decided against whatever he had been about to say. On the drive home, the atmosphere between them was charged with unspoken feelings. When Alex walked Sarah to her door, she turned to face him. "What were you going to tell me earlier?" Alex hesitated, then stepped closer. "I was going to tell you that what I'm feeling for you has nothing to do with your recovery or your disability. It has to do with who you are as a person, your strength, your determination, your kindness." Sarah's breath caught. "Alex, I know this might be complicated. I don't know what I am, your mentor, your friend, but I can't pretend that what I feel for you is purely professional anymore." Sarah looked into his eyes, seeing vulnerability there that she hadn't noticed before. "What do you feel for me?" "I'm falling in love with you, Sarah. With your laugh, with the way you challenge yourself every day, with your courage, not with your story or your journey, but with you." The kiss that followed was tender and hesitant at first, then deeper as Sarah responded. When they finally separated, Sarah felt like the last piece of her old self-doubt had finally cracked. "Are you sure?" she asked. About me? About this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. As Alex drove home that night, Sarah stood on her parents' porch, thinking about how dramatically her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had believed that no one would ever love her again. Tonight, a man she deeply respected and was growing to love had told her exactly the opposite. But, more importantly, she was beginning to love herself again. The woman who had accepted Alex's invitation to dance, who had bought a beautiful dress, who had engaged confidently with successful professionals, that woman was someone she was proud to be. The next morning, her mother found her making breakfast and humming something she hadn't done since before the accident. "You look happy, Mika," Carmen observed. "I am happy," Sarah replied, surprised by how naturally the words came. "For the first time in a long time, I'm actually happy." 3 months after the gala, Sarah and Alex's relationship had deepened into something neither of them had expected. What had begun as mentorship had evolved into a genuine partnership built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and growing love. Sarah had moved into her own apartment again, a significant step toward independence that she had achieved with Alex's encouragement, but not his financial help. She was determined to rebuild her life on her own terms, and Alex respected that boundary even when he could have easily made things easier for her. "I need to know I can do this myself," Sarah had explained when Alex offered to help with the deposit and first month's rent. "I understand," Alex had replied, "but promise me you'll ask for help if you actually need it, not just when you want it." The apartment was small, but perfectly suited to her needs. She had chosen a ground-floor unit to avoid stairs, and she had arranged the furniture to create clear pathways that accommodated her prosthetic. More importantly, it was hers, a space where she could be completely herself. Elena had become not just Sarah's dance instructor, but also a close friend and confidant. During one of their sessions, she brought up something that had been on her mind. "Sarah, I've been thinking about the spring showcase we do every year. I'd like you to consider performing a solo piece." Sarah nearly missed a step. "A solo? In front of an audience? You're ready, more than ready. Your technique has improved dramatically, but more importantly, you dance with emotion now. People need to see what's possible." The idea terrified and excited Sarah in equal measure. Since the accident, she had been focused on personal recovery, but the thought of performing, of potentially inspiring others the way she had been inspired, held enormous appeal. What kind of piece would it be? "I was thinking of something that tells your story. Not explicitly, but emotionally. A piece about falling and rising, about finding strength in unexpected places." That evening, Sarah discussed Elena's proposal with Alex over dinner at her apartment. She had been cooking for him regularly, another skill she had reclaimed and now enjoyed more than ever. "What scares you about it?" Alex asked, after she explained her conflicted feelings. "What if I fall? What if people see me as inspiration porn? You know, the disabled person overcoming adversity for other people's emotional satisfaction." Alex set down his fork and looked at her seriously. "First, if you fall, you get back up and keep dancing. That's what performers do. Second, there's a difference between inspiration porn and genuine inspiration. You're not performing to make people feel good about themselves for watching you. You're performing because you're a dancer who happens to have a prosthetic. When did you become so wise about this stuff?" "When I fell in love with a woman who challenges me to think differently about everything." Sarah felt her heart skip. They had been saying "I love you" for weeks now, but it still thrilled her every time. A week later, Sarah accepted Elena's challenge. The next 2 months were intensive preparation. Elena choreographed a piece that was both technically demanding and emotionally expressive, incorporating movements that highlighted Sarah's strength rather than hiding her prosthetic. "Don't try to dance like someone with 2 biological legs," Elena instructed. Dance like Sarah Martinez. Use your whole body, including your prosthetic, as part of the artistic expression. As the showcase approached, Sarah's confidence grew. She was no longer the uncertain, defeated woman who had reluctantly attended her first support group meeting. She was a performer preparing to share her art with an audience. The night before the showcase, Alex surprised her with dinner at the restaurant where they had their first date. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small wrapped package. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a dancer in mid-leap. "It's beautiful," Sarah said, genuinely touched. "I wanted you to have something to remind you of how far you've come, not just in dancing, but in life." As Alex fastened the bracelet around her wrist, Sarah felt overwhelmed by gratitude, not just for the gift, but for everything he had brought into her life. "Alex, I need to tell you something. When we first met, I thought you were too good to be true. Rich, successful, handsome, and interested in helping people like me. I was waiting for the catch. And now? Now I know that you're all of those things, but you're also real. You're not helping me out of pity or obligation. You see me as I really am, and somehow that's enough for you." Alex reached across the table and took her hand. "Sarah, you're not enough for me. You're more than enough. You're everything I didn't know I was looking for." The showcase was held at a small theater downtown, with an audience of about 200 people. Friends, family members, and supporters of Second Chance Athletics. Sarah's parents and Miguel had driven down from Denver, and she could see them in the third row, beaming with pride. As Sarah waited in the wings for her performance, Elena appeared beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified, excited, ready. Remember, this isn't about perfection. This is about truth. Dance your truth." The music began, a haunting melody that built to a triumphant crescendo. As Sarah took the stage, she felt the euphoria fall away. For the next 4 minutes, she told her story through movement. The piece began with flowing, confident movements that suddenly interrupted by sharp, jarring motions representing the accident. The middle section showed struggle, uncertainty, and the slow process of rebuilding. The final section was pure joy, celebration of what she had discovered about herself. When the music ended and Sarah held her final pose, the theater was silent for a moment before erupting in sustained applause. Through the stage lights, she could see people in the audience wiping their eyes. As Sarah took her bow, she caught Alex's eyes in the audience. He was standing, applauding, with tears running down his face. In that moment, she understood that she had achieved something she never thought possible. She had transformed her deepest vulnerability into her greatest strength. Backstage, surrounded by congratulations from other performers and audience members, Sarah felt a completeness she hadn't experienced since before the accident. But it wasn't the same wholeness she had known before. It was something deeper and more meaningful. "That was incredible," Miguel said, hugging her tightly. "I'm so proud of you." "We all are, mija," her father added, his voice thick with emotion. When Alex finally reached her through the crowd, he didn't say anything at first. He just held her, and she could feel his heart beating fast against her chest. "I love you," he whispered in her ear. "I love your courage, your talent, your heart. I love all of you." "I love you too," Sarah replied. "Thank you for seeing who I could become before I could see it myself." As they left the theater that night, walking hand in hand down the Denver street, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The accident that had once seemed like the end of her story had actually been the beginning of a much richer, more meaningful chapter. She was no longer the woman who believed no one could love an amputee. She was a woman who had discovered that love, both self-love and romantic love, wasn't about perfection. It was about authenticity, courage, and the willingness to be vulnerable with the right person. 1 year after Sarah's showcase performance, her life had expanded in ways she never could have imagined. She had not only returned to work, but had found a new career that fulfilled her in ways her old job never had. Working as a program coordinator. For Second Chance Athletics, she helped other amputees navigate their own journeys of recovery and rediscovery. "You have a gift for this," Alex observed one afternoon as they watched Sarah lead a support group session. "You know exactly what to say because you've been exactly where they are." Sarah's role at the foundation had grown organically. What started as volunteer work had evolved into a full-time position when it became clear that her combination of personal experience and natural empathy made her uniquely qualified to help others. She was particularly effective with newly injured clients, offering them something that no amount of professional training could provide: genuine understanding. "Remember," she was saying to a young man who had lost his leg in a construction accident, "recovery isn't a straight line. Some days you'll feel like you're making huge progress, and other days you'll feel like you're back at square one. That's normal. The key is to not let the bad days convince you that the good days aren't real." Alex and Sarah's relationship had also deepened and stabilized. They had moved in together 6 months earlier, choosing a house that could accommodate both of their needs: Alex's home office for his business and Sarah's need for accessibility features. It was their first shared space, and creating it together had been a joyful process of compromise and collaboration. The house sat on a hill, overlooking the city, with large windows that filled the rooms with natural light. Sarah had insisted on contributing to the mortgage payments despite Alex's protests, and they had eventually agreed on an arrangement that reflected their respective incomes while preserving Sarah's sense of independence. "I love that you want to take care of me," Sarah had told him during one of their negotiations, "but I need to take care of myself too, and I want to take care of you sometimes." Their life together had settled into comfortable routines that felt both domestic and romantic. Mornings began with coffee on the deck overlooking the mountains. Evenings often ended with Sarah practicing new dance routines while Alex worked on foundation business, and weekends were spent hiking on accessible trails or entertaining friends. Elena had become a regular dinner guest, along with several of Sarah's colleagues from the foundation and some of Alex's business associates. Sarah particularly enjoyed these gatherings because they represented the full spectrum of her new life: professional relationships, artistic connections, and genuine friendships based on mutual respect rather than pity or obligation. On a crisp October evening, almost 2 years to the day after Sarah's accident, Alex suggested they take a walk on one of their favorite trails. The path wound through aspen groves that were brilliant gold in the autumn light, and Sarah never tired of the beauty of the Colorado landscape. "I love this time of year," Sarah said, stopping to photograph the interplay of light and shadow on the trail ahead. "Everything is changing, but it's so beautiful." "Change can be beautiful," Alex agreed, but there was something different in his voice that made Sarah look at him more closely. "Are you okay? You seem nervous." "I am nervous," Alex admitted. "I have something I want to talk to you about." They had reached a clearing with a bench overlooking the valley below. Alex gestured for Sarah to sit down, then knelt beside the bench on one knee. Sarah's breath caught as she realized what was happening. "Sarah," Alex began, his voice steady despite his obvious emotion. 2 years ago, you thought no one would ever love an amputee. You were wrong about that, but not because someone decided to overlook your disability. You were wrong because disability was never the thing that would define whether you were lovable." He paused, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "You are lovable because you are kind, courageous, intelligent, funny, and beautiful." You challenge me to be better every day. You've built a life that matters, not despite your challenges, but through them. You've shown me that strength isn't about avoiding difficulty. It's about how you respond to it. Tears were streaming down Sarah's face now, but she was smiling. I don't want to marry you because I'm inspired by your story, Sarah. I want to marry you because I can't imagine my life without your laugh, your perspective, your passion, your love. Will you marry me? The ring was perfect, a simple solitaire that caught the afternoon light beautifully. But what struck Sarah most was the certainty she felt. This wasn't a fairy tale rescue or a charitable gesture. This was a man who knew her completely, her strengths and weaknesses, her fears and dreams, asking to build a life with her as an equal partner. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, of course, yes. As Alex slipped the ring onto her finger, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The accident that had once seemed like the end of everything had actually been the beginning of a life she never could have imagined for herself. I have a confession, she said as they held each other on the trail bench. What's that? For the longest time I thought you were too good to be true. I kept waiting for you to realize you could do better. Alex pulled back to look at her face. And now I know that we're both lucky. I'm lucky to have found someone who loves me completely, and you're lucky to have found someone who will love you completely in return. The engagement brought congratulations from everyone in their extended community. Sarah's parents were overjoyed. Elena cried when she heard the news, and Miguel immediately started planning bachelor and bachelorette parties. But the response that meant the most to Sarah came from the members of her support group and her clients at the foundation. These were people who understood how impossible love had seemed in the darkest days after injury, and their excitement felt like a celebration not just of Sarah's happiness, but of possibility itself. You give us hope, one woman told her. Seeing you find love makes me believe I can find it too. As Sarah and Alex began planning their wedding, they decided to hold it at the Second Chance Athletics facility. It seemed fitting that their commitment ceremony should take place in the space where they had first recognized their feelings for each other. Besides, Sarah pointed out, it's wheelchair accessible and half our friends use mobility aids. It just makes sense. The wedding, held on a warm spring day 6 months later, was everything Sarah had dreamed of, and nothing like what she had imagined before the accident. Instead of a traditional church ceremony, they exchanged vows in the dance studio, where Sarah had rediscovered her confidence. Elena performed a piece she had choreographed specifically for the occasion, and several of Sarah's clients served as ushers and attendants. Sarah's wedding dress was custom-made to accommodate her prosthetic while still being elegantly beautiful. She walked down the aisle without assistance, her head high and her smile radiant. When she reached Alex at the altar, he whispered, "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen." In her vows, Sarah spoke about how love had taught her the difference between being whole and being complete. "I thought the accident had broken me," she said, looking directly at Alex. "But what I learned is that being whole isn't about having all your original parts. Being whole is about embracing who you are completely, including the parts of your story that are difficult. Alex, you didn't complete me. I was already complete. But you chose to love the complete me, and that has made all the difference." Alex's vows focused on partnership and mutual growth. "Sarah, you didn't need rescuing when I met you. You were already rescuing yourself. What we found together wasn't salvation, it was companionship. I promise to be your partner in building a life that honors both our dreams, supports both our ambitions, and celebrates both our victories." As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, a routine they had practiced with Elena for months, Sarah felt the profound satisfaction of a life rebuilt not just successfully, but meaningfully. The song they chose was "At Last" by Etta James, and as Alex spun her gently around the dance floor, Sarah reflected on how true those lyrics had become. At last her love had come along, not to fix her or complete her, but to join her in creating something beautiful together. Later that evening, as the reception wound down and they prepared to leave for their honeymoon in Italy, Sarah pulled Alex aside for a private moment. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night we had dinner, about defining myself by what I can do instead of what I can't do? I remember. I want you to know that marrying you isn't something I'm doing despite my disability or because of my disability. It's something I'm doing because I love you and because I'm finally confident enough to believe I deserve this happiness." Alex kissed her softly. "We both deserve this happiness, and we're going to build an amazing life together." As they drove away from their wedding reception, Sarah looked back at the foundation building where their love story had begun. The parking lot was the same one where Alex had first approached her with a business card and an invitation to consider adaptive dance. But everything else had changed: her confidence, her dreams, her understanding of what was possible. The cruel voices that had once whispered, "Who could love someone like you?" had been replaced by a different truth. She was exactly the kind of person who deserved love, not because she had overcome her disability, but because she was a whole, complete, valuable human being who happened to have a prosthetic leg. 6 months later, as Sarah and Alex settled into married life, they received news that would add another dimension to their happiness. Sarah was pregnant, something she had worried might not be possible given her medical history, but which her doctors had assured her was perfectly safe. "Are you scared?" Alex asked as they looked at the ultrasound images together. "A little," Sarah admitted, "but mostly I'm excited. I keep thinking about what kind of parent I want to be." "What kind do you want to be?" "I want to be the kind of parent who teaches our child that everyone has challenges, and that challenges don't make you less valuable or less capable of achieving your dreams. I want our child to grow up seeing disability as just one kind of human diversity." As Sarah's pregnancy progressed, she continued working at the foundation, adapting her activities as needed, but never stepping back from her commitment to helping others. She also continued dancing, working with Elena to modify routines that accommodated her changing body. "You're glowing," Elena observed during one of their sessions. "Pregnancy suits you." "I feel like my whole life suits me now," Sarah replied. Finally, the baby, a daughter they named Isabella Carmen after both their mothers, was born on a snowy February morning. As Sarah held her daughter for the first time, she felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of love and possibility. "She's perfect," Alex whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand. "She is," Sarah agreed, "and she's going to grow up knowing that perfect comes in all different forms." Looking back, Sarah could trace the exact moment her life changed, from the night Alex approached her in the community center parking lot. But she had come to understand that the real transformation hadn't happened because of anything Alex did. For her, it had happened because she chose to believe that her story wasn't over, that love was still possible, and that she deserved happiness. The voices that had once told her no one would ever love an amputee had been wrong, not because someone decided to overlook her disability, but because she had learned to see herself as more than her disability. She was a wife, a mother, a professional, a dancer, a friend, and a woman who had discovered that the most powerful love story isn't about someone rescuing you from your circumstances. It's about finding someone who chooses to love you not despite your circumstances, but as a complete person whose circumstances are just one part of a much larger, more beautiful story.